Vamos lá. Olá, sejam bem-vindos à segunda edição da Mostra de Cinema Árabe Feminino. Essa mostra é uma realização do Centro Cultural Banco do Brasil, uma produção da Partizane Filmes, apresentado pelo Ministério do Turismo e patrocinado pelo Banco do Brasil. A programação é totalmente gratuita e online, vocês podem conferi-la no site www.cinemaarabefeminino.com. Vamos ter agora uma conversa sobre a diretora homenageada Jocelyne Saab, e teremos aqui a MATHILDE ROUXEL, NOUR OUAYDA e FEDRA RODRÍGUEZ para conversar sobre essa diretora tão importante. E agora eu vou fazer essa apresentação em inglês. Hello everybody, welcome to the second Arab Women's Film Festival in Brazil. This festival is being made by Centro Cultural Banco do Brasil, is supported by Banco do Brasil and produced by Partizane Filmes. The whole program is free of charge and online. You can check all the information on the website www.cinemaarabefeminino.com. I hope you enjoy this talk now. It's going to be a talk about Jocelyne Saab, with Mathilde ROUXEL, NOUR, OUAYDA, and FEDRA Rodriguez. Go ahead, FEDRA.
Thank you very much. My name is FEDRA Rodriguez. I've been working with Arab cinema and literature since I was in the doctorate, in my doctorate thesis. And that's why I decided to promote once a festival, a movie festival, an Arab movie festival here in Florianópolis, South Brazil. And I had the opportunity to talk, to have a short conversation by telephone with Jocelyne Saab. And then a friendship has started from that point. And it was amazing to discover, to find out the quality and the importance of her work. And I'm so honored to be part of it, to receive this invitation and to take part of this event and discuss with colleagues Mathilde ROUXEL and NOUR OUAYDA the opportunity to talk about this fantastic movie director who sadly left us in 2019. But her, of course, her legacy, the legacy of her work and the quality of her reflections, the ideas, all those things that are left in those movies will be with us forever. And that's why we have to discuss and show Brazil and the world its importance. Now I give floor to Mathilde ROUXEL, and then she can talk about her experience, and also NOUR with OUAYDA. Both will talk about this, what they know, what they think about this fantastic work. And I'm also going to take part of the conversation. I'm going to participate and maybe sometimes interrupt, ask questions and discuss and make something really friendly and rich. That's what I think. That's the idea. When I received the invitation, I thought that was the point. That was the idea. So I'm here. That's why I give floor to Mathilde ROUXEL to talk about Jocelyne Saab's work.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very glad to see that the interest to Jocelyne is reaching Brazil. I think it's the first time her work is shown in like so widely. Like you chose to show like almost 10 films. So I'm very glad to know that that this work will be seen and that it's available also for the people for free. I am a film researcher. I worked on Jocelyne's film since 2013. At this time, it's this time I met her. I met her in Beirut, and we started working together. So as long as I was working on her work, I was also working with Jocelyne on her film and work, and she was doing a festival in Beirut at that time, and I became her assistant. So I know her work and I know the person, and so I don't know, as an historian I can do a presentation of Jocelyne, maybe like to give some inputs about her life and her work. Jocelyne Saab was a reporter. She was a war reporter for the French TV. She started in the 70s. She started covering the different wars in the Middle East at the time. She was in Egypt for the October War. She was in Libya to cover the Gaddafi's retirement and also like the Green March he made on Cairo. She was also covering the Iraqi war against the Kurdistan in the same years, like 1974. And then she started working on the Palestinian situation in Lebanon. And because of that, she decided to leave the French TV that was not in line with her opinion. And she started working on specific topics about the Palestinian resistance that led to a huge work about the Lebanese civil war that started in 1975. And she decided to stay in Beirut during the war and to film not the events, but her city disappearing, actually. So she filmed more than 10 films in Beirut between 1975 and 1982. She was one of the only women journalists having a so wide like she was still working for the French TV. She was selling her films for the French TV, so she was broadcasted and very nice, like for very large audience. And she started also selling her films for like in Japan, in Sweden, in Germany, and so her work is quite well known for the Lebanese throughout the world, and also for the people like who were following the Lebanese events. It was something like quite interesting because she had a different point of view than the French journalists. And actually the aim of the work she was doing was to explain and to tell the war through more poetry, and trying to explain another point of view also about this civil war that was like seen as a war between Muslim and Christians. And she was trying to make these events more complex, and to try to bring life and to show the life and the resistance of the people in the films, more than like showing the destruction and the people, and as with like the war in the civil war in Beirut was often shown as a disaster, like we can see now in Gaza, what's happening now in Palestine. It's and as a Lebanese, she was really playing her identity, also trying to show something different to the international audience. So the selection that the festival chose to screen is something very interesting, I think, because it's showing this necessity of talking through poetry and through the point of view of someone living there, and not only giving information. So I hope like the people will follow. Like it's something very. It was in the actuality, like it was the news, but it was also poetry, and that's why I think we can be touched so much until now about the films she made during this period. So so after the Palestinian left Lebanon, she decided to stop making documentaries in Lebanon. Like she decided that like documentary is not a mean anymore to talk about the war. And that's when she decided to start working on a fiction film, A Suspended Life, that is also shown in the program. And she started through this new mean of expressing herself and expressing her love to Beirut, to record differently the history of this city and this country. And I think Once Upon a Time Beirut, which is the last film you're showing in this program, is also like kind of retrospective of how can we tell the story of this city, and how can we tell the story of this country that is now disappearing, and that we have to rebuild all together. So yeah, I think it's a short introduction, but I think it's a good start to let Nour express what she wants to say about Jocelyne's work, because I think it's also very interesting for this generation, the generation who didn't know the war in Lebanon, to have these images and to work with these images and showing these images and talking about them. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Mathilde, and thank you for this invitation. I think I'm gonna maybe have a starting point that's a bit different. I'll start by introducing maybe myself. So I'm Nour OUAYDA. I'm a filmmaker, a film programmer. I also write about cinema. I work at Metropolis Cinema Association in Beirut, and I manage a Cinematheque Beirut project, which is a film heritage project, amongst other things. And yeah, as I was saying, I think I'll maybe take a more personal approach and talk a little bit about how I met Jocelyne, because the thing with anyone that knows or has been in contact with Jocelyne's energy knows, I'm sure, how little it takes for her to affect our lives. She's one of those people that has this kind of energy that just overflows. And for a young filmmaker to be trying to figure out what to do in the city, to see how others have filmed it, that was really something. And the thing is that the first time I actually saw films by Jocelyne, once it was in a course, and another time it was during the premiere of What's Going On, which was one of her latest films. They actually, that film didn't speak to me a lot. I think I missed something from it. I wasn't, it kind of didn't catch on my radar. It wasn't until years after that that I had been living in Montreal doing my master's and deciding, not knowing if I wanted to come back to Beirut and what to do and where to work. And one of the things that I was quite interested in is to see how you would do, let's say, independent festivals or organize independent events in the city. And to do that, I wanted to meet Jocelyne because of the Cultural Resistance Festival that she led for a few years in Beirut. And I was interested to see how she organized it, what were the logistics, because that happened also in the years that I was abroad. And I was passing through Paris and I asked a friend, Nasri Sayer, who knows Jocelyne very well, who's a good friend and acted with Jocelyne, to put us in touch. And she told me to meet her at her apartment in Saint-Germain. And I went there, we had a coffee, and she was just explaining to me how things worked, and the conversation instantly took. And I felt like I was talking with someone that I knew for years. And actually, she, as I was leaving her apartment, she gave me a copy of the book that Mathilde wrote about her work. And in the dédicace, she wrote something that every time I think about it, it makes me very emotional. And we had known each other for 2 hours. And she wrote something like, for the woman that reminds me of myself when I was 26. And as I was leaving, she received an email for some screenshots from her films. And she was a bit tired from the screenshots that she generally sends for 2 of her films. I think it was Letters from Beirut and Beirut, ma ville, Beirut, my city. And she told me, do you know how you take screenshots? I don't know how we do that. And I was literally on the door about to leave. I was like, yeah, I can help you. And so I went and sat next to her. And this is just, she can just suddenly just start working with her, right? And then we start going through her film. And I had not seen these images. We're talking about Beirut in what, 78, Lettres de Beirut, Mathilde, or 79. And then Beirut, ma ville in 82. I had not seen Beirut like that. And I was just sitting there in the apartment, completely frozen, supposedly to do like a very logistical task of taking screenshots. And of course, Jocelyne's voice-over narration explaining to me the context of all the scenes, and it was all the emotions all at once. And so we start taking screenshots, and she starts telling me about how they filmed certain things. And the thing with Jocelyne is that she could be talking to you about a group of resistance and how they followed them and how they shot them and how they had it. And then suddenly she's talking to me about the skirt that she was wearing and how much she loved it and how much it made her feel empowered to be filming in a skirt, for example. And all of these at the same time. And from, not to stay too long, but from there on, we started talking about what it means to take screenshots from a film like that. And then she just says, actually, I'm working on a book with Nicole Brenez, and a project where we would like to edit a book of images taken from my films. Would you like to work with us on it? And I had known her for a few hours, and one thing that a few weeks, I told her, of course. A few weeks later, very diligently. She sends me an email, tells me if you're still on board, you can come this summer. If you don't have anything, you can stay at my apartment in Paris for a month, and we can work on the book. And I told her, okay. And I came in summer. I lived at her house, and that's when I discovered her whole filmography. So I watched all her films in a matter of a few weeks, which is something to watch all of that filmography in a condensed time period. And I just discovered my city through her eyes. I discovered corners of the world that I had never seen before. And I was absolutely, I don't know, it was, it made me feel less alone suddenly to know that images like that exist. And I instantaneously felt that these are films that need to be part of our collective memory. All of us, not just in Lebanon, but everywhere, but especially in Lebanon. And when you see these films, you just want to show them as much as you can to as many people as you can. So, and I think recently also, since the revolution, but also since the summer in August, everything that has happened and all the changes of the city, you kind of go back to certain films. And I've been, amongst films, I've been going back a lot to Jocelyne's filmography, to her images, to try to, as if I'm trying to look for, because as Mathilde was saying, she was kind of obsessed with how the city was changing, trying to constantly capture all the little changes in their nuances, in their details, on what are the traces that are left. And yeah, I feel we're all a bit in that legacy when we try to film stuff in this city. Yeah.
I'd like to ask you both a question. In fact, because you have the contact, a direct contact with her, you really know profoundly the whole work and her life, at least as a movie director, as an artist too, because she was a photographer and she made fantastic works in this area too. But I'd like to know, if we think about the history, the origins, how did that, we have to think about when Jocelyne Saab was born. Lebanon was a country in which cinema, movies were becoming something, was flourishing, was something new, not new, but starting to leave the Egypt scene and become the main part of the Arab world cinema. Also, that's the point. And she said that she was always passionate by image, but her personal and her career did not start with movies, because her family, as far as I know, her family asked her to study economy or something like that. And then after that, she decided to start to find a way to work with movies, with cinema, with cameras. And after that, this period as a reporter, as a journalist, finally she decided to merge, to go deep into the fictional movies. How do you think that both paths, this complicated path, took part in her work, and how this is expressed in each one of her movies? What do you think?
I think she needed to engage herself as well in politics in a way. She didn't want to be a militant. She didn't want to take a side specifically. She had her own opinions. but she wanted to express herself and to engage in a way, and she started in journalism in the writing section, and it didn't work out because she was not a great writer. And she like quickly she had the chance to. She was sent in Libya as a translator at first, and she actually directed the film. And she was sent, and she became a war reporter at 25 years old. It's quite young, and she found a way to talk to people, to have more than only information, but also like emotion. And I think this is why she decided to go to poetry, because actually when she started filming in Beirut, she started also asking like poets like Etel Adnan, or like script writers like Roger Asaf, to work with her to write beautiful texts on beautiful images that meant to her a lot. And I think this is the first step towards something more fictional, or something that needs more money as well, and needs more a bigger industry that was not possible to. It was not possible for her to do it in Lebanon in the 80s easily, you know. So she always tried to be around people making cinema. She assisted Farouk Beroufa in the south of Lebanon for the shooting of his film Nahla in 78, I guess, 79, I don't remember. And she also was an assistant of Volker Schlendorf for the Die Vercherung, I don't know the name in English, but the film he shot in Lebanon.
Circle of Deceit.
Circle of Deceit. And he like she was trying to find a way to express herself through images, but she did it in like a film like Beirut, My City, is something very strong, and it's not a reportage, it's a film, like it's something you can show in cinema, that has to be shown in cinema actually. But it's also she always had the same aim, like telling history with the great history through images, I think. And after some time, she decided to leave cinema and started making video art and photographs, but it's always like this idea of telling stories through the image, and not only through the text, and not only through a narrative, I think. And even her last fiction movie, as Nour said, it's very difficult to follow if you don't have any idea of what she's doing and who she is actually. I think it's a very personal film, and it's something like, it's like when you know her, you understand the film, and it became one of my favorites. And the first time I watched it, I was like, oh my god, I will work on this kind of film. What can I do? I don't know this work. I don't understand. Like it's Beirut, okay. I don't know Lebanon. I don't understand anything. And then the more you know her work, and the more you know herself, the more you understand that it's more than symbolic. It's very personal and very individual. And this is very strong actually. And this has no borders. Like we can feel from everywhere this kind of emotion she's giving to you through the image. I think she's very strong with it, and she made like this kind of. I don't know, she had a relation to people that was so strong, you know, and even stronger in documentary than what she could make in fiction, I guess. But it's still there, like this like like at some point some of the fiction are quite naive, but this is also very touching, you know. Like in Once Upon a Time Beirut, you have this. It's a bit clumsy sometimes, but this is so strong as well, you know. It's like trying to talk to us as like a fairy tale in a way. And I think it's something she had all of her life, like between something very naive and something very politically strong, you know, like ideology, but very naive words to tell it, and the image are strong, and this mix is something that like touches you a lot, I guess, like at least for me. But,
yeah, for sure. I think this this ability to go towards people and to bring people towards her, and to to get people to talk in certain ways. This is one of the strongest things that you see, for example, from her earliest films. Like for me, Lebanon in the Whirlwind, Le Liban dans la Tourmente, which is a film that was made right as the civil wars were starting. And what's absolutely fascinating about this film is that she is talking to everyone, like people from so many different factions, so many different political parties, backgrounds, social classes, different places in the country. And the thing is that she's always creating these maps. She's mapping out places through her images and through the people that she talks to. And this is, I find that very, very strong. For example, in a film like, it's not showing in the program, but the film that she made in Iran, we don't particularly understand everything that is happening in Iran then, but she's always in places at these very transitional moments. She just finds herself there in the middle of everything and has a capacity to capture the complexity, because exactly of what Mathilde is saying is that she's not afraid to take things in their extreme, the naivety in its extreme, the poetry in its extreme, the image and what it can represent to its extreme too. And for me, one of the things that are, that's something that we sometimes lose today is this capacity to produce that much. This is, it's the number of films that she made, the frequency, the urgency, and this also comes from, I guess, war reporting and reportage, and this thing where you're just thinking as you're doing, you're thinking through your gesture and not thinking before it and then applying it. You're really with your camera as you are on the street and walking and filming. It is the gesture of thinking itself, and that is something that I feel sometimes we've lost in our generation, where it could take us years to make something. Of course, it depends on if we're talking about fiction or not, or what kind of production apparatus is there. But the abundance of images and abundance of production, I feel, is also something that politically is very strong, because it also defies a certain system of doing things that have to go through orders, and I find that very inspiring on a lot of levels.
Yeah, I will add something, because it's what is really interesting also with the Jocelyne cinema is that indeed, like she was in an emergency to shoot and to show and to denounce and to testify, but that was also the period asked that for that, like the militant cinema was in the same rhythm, and but Jocelyne's particularity is that she was not doing militant cinema. She was doing something very personal. She was not following a militant system. She was not working for people. She was sometimes working against the people she was supporting, and she had some problems with some of the people working, like in the Palestinian for the Palestinian fighters. She was not always like in line, but that's why we can see it now. Like she's one of the only one working so much for her own opinion, like just trying to express and give also a voice to like her friends, artists or poets or others, but also the people in Beirut, like without confession, without any political just the people in the streets, the children, the fighters, the civils, like the civilians, like anyone. And this is quite interesting, because I think she got it from the French TV. Like she was trained in France. Actually, she was trained with this kind of idea of objectivity and a reportage. You have to ask everyone. You have to take the opinion of everyone and to give a general overview of the situation. and she took this baggage, she took this lesson, and she made something very personal and very fair actually for this. And now watching a film like Lebanon in turmoil, it's like, okay, you can understand what was happening in Beirut, because you don't have only one side, you have all the sides, and she has an opinion, and you understand very well what she's saying and who she's supporting, but you have enough material to have your own opinion as well. Of course you will follow her opinion because it's stronger, and she's discussing it, like it's just like but you have like, it's very nice to be able to follow the way she was thinking through the film she was doing, because she's just showing you what she saw. She saw this and this and this, and she would just give everything to us to let us have an opinion, and this is actually quite rare in the region, and during this time, in this kind of wars. Like, even the French journalist going to Lebanon, you had only like one side, and it was quite rare to have the other side, to have images from the south of Lebanon, for example. She was one of the first and almost the only one going to the south and documenting the south and the resistance, and in this way. And I think this is also what makes this film so important now. Like, it's really testimonies for the history, actually. It's and it's also a lesson of cinema, because you have to understand that if you talk from yourself to explain a political situation, you can say a lot more than if you just follow an ideology. And she understood that quite early, for considering the period she was filming, actually.
That's also what makes her films still very actual, like very like watching them today. It's sometimes it's almost surreal. If people weren't dressed differently, you would say it's happening right now. And that's also a very strong, I don't know, these images are these films are so important in the way that we try to also construct on what lineage do we place ourselves. For example, here there's a big crisis in memory, in collective memory, in how generations succeed each other. There's a lot of ruptures, and films like Jocelyne's films, for example, allow to access certain atmospheres, certain moods, certain moments that are otherwise not talked about, or forgotten, or purposefully erased. And the thing is that she's also played. Fedra, you're asking, of course, in what time she started doing what she did, and this was a time that many different voices of independent cinema were rising in the country, and trying to find the ways to be able to create different languages that can speak of what is happening in all its complexity, in all its ruptures, in all its violence and trauma. And so there was different experimentations in form and narration. And Jocelyne was definitely one of the pioneers in that. And so she had a role in writing all these histories with her images and with her films. But she also, like, for example, the film that is one of the films that's shown Once Upon a Time in Beirut is like what I want to say is that she acted on a lot of levels. Like, she's a filmmaker and had a role in the films that she made, but she also, through, for example, the Cultural Resistance Festival, had a role in disseminating a certain kind of cinema, or disseminating cinema as a gesture of resistance, of cultural resistance, but also with a film like Once Upon a Time in Beirut. This film is part of a bigger project that gave birth to, for example, the first Lebanese Cinematheque. So she acted on a lot of levels because of, while searching for scenes that are shot in Beirut in Lebanese, Arab, or international films. She started to locate copies of films that were lost or didn't know where they were, and in order to make the film, they restored certain films and scenes from these films that were then re-employed. So even in her filmmaking practice, she was working on so many levels and so many layers in what she was always giving to our collective memory. So it wasn't only in the images that she was producing, but also in the images that she located and preserved and highlighted and disseminated. And she played all these roles at once, because all of that is interlinked also, to make films, to show them, to preserve them. So yeah.
I'd like to ask one more question for both of you. There's something that really draws my attention in her movies. She was bold enough to show women and their needs in countries like the Middle Eastern countries, which they have many restrictions for women, as we know. Although each country has its variation and changes, but most of them, they have serious restrictions for women. And she was bold enough to show women and the need to release their bodies. That was an important point that was shown in her movies. Especially, I can mention Dunia, which is a movie that I've shown here in Florianopolis. After showing Once Upon a Time in Beirut in the first movie festival, the second Club Ciné, comme on dit en français, as we say in French, the second Club Ciné was totally consecrated to Dunia, which was a very important movie, in my opinion, because she talks about some issues which are very delicate, including the female genital mutilation. She mentions quickly there is a character which passes by this experience, and even Dunia, who tries to release her body through art, through dance, and she has the support of a professor, a man, and also a teacher who is also a poet. So I'd like you to observe or discuss a little bit from your point of view. I would be very pleased to know your opinion about these issues, particularly that were very bold from her part. And what do you think, each one of you, Mathilde, Nour?
I think she was kind of identifying herself to these kind of women who were living for resisting, in a way, because this character of the woman who needs to bind because of the society, the rules of the society. It's something we can see also in A Suspended Life already, in the first fiction film she made, because the Samar, the main character of the film, has issues with her brother and her father, because she already made love, and she needs to become a virgin again. And this is a big question that is raising sometimes in the films, and it's something which is questioned from here, because it's showing also the difficulty of this woman to be free, that the freedom for women, it's something even like that. It's another struggle that she has to follow. So, and I think personally she always fought for herself as well, for her freedom and for her dignity as well, because also in the law, the laws are not equal for women in Lebanon, and she suffered a lot from that because of her, like, and she decided to follow the Palestinian struggle, and it was not the political line of her family, so she had like she was also in tension with her family, and because she was a woman, she lost a lot because of that. So I think it's a personal problem she had to fight for and against all of her life, and it's raising in her films and in most of her films. Like, only What's Going On has a man as a main character, but this man is meeting a lot of women as well that are guides for him in the city of Beirut, which is, as you said, a woman actually in her films. And I think I don't know what to say, because she's not the most feminist filmmaker we can find in the Arab world, actually. Like many of the women filmed much more women than Jocelyne. Jocelyne is one of the only one filming everyone in Beirut. Like, everybody has an interest for her. Like, she's going to people, to poor people, to children, to rich people, to anyone, to political figures, and you know, it's quite interesting as well to see that if she's in the middle of the Sahara, you have lots of women fighters, and she's talking to women fighters, but she's also talking to fighters, and she's also talking to other parties, and it's always in these discussions, like she's talking about humanity. She's not talking about women specifically, which is also quite interesting, because she never defined herself as a feminist before, like, 2013, I guess. So that's also something quite interesting. Like, she discovered very late that she was a feminist, but she never fought for that. You know, it's but as you said, it's something we can draw a line between whole of a filmography with this character of a woman, like, struggling with life, and to find a bit of freedom in the middle of this turmoil, actually. So I don't know if what Nour has as a reflection about this, but yeah, I think it's something quite interesting to ask, especially in regards of the other production in the region, like, because this main character of a woman fighting for freedom is something we can find in Tunisia, for example, a lot. Like, most of the women filmmakers in Tunisia has this kind of figures. So it's not original in itself, but it's in Jocelyne's filmography. It has a weight, as you say. It's something that is related to her, I guess.
Yeah, I think the way I kind of feel it is to continue a bit on what Mathilde is saying. It really has to do with this desire to follow wherever there is people resisting. I don't know, for me, the feminine in her work is strongly linked with the idea of resistance and with the idea of struggle. And for me, it's less about women and more about the feminine as a way of being in the world, a way of seeing the world. I don't know if I agree with the idea that Beirut in her film is a woman. I don't see it that way. At least maybe I also have a problem with womanizing Beirut, because a lot of male Arab poets always speak about Beirut as a woman, and that always puts me off. I don't know. It's not like that and they're always trying to seduce it and trying to say that it seduces them. So I don't see it. Of course, Jocelyne is not in that language, or not in that. But I don't know if I see. Yeah, I don't know if in her films this is what she does. It's more that she proposes constantly a way to read the world through the feminine. It has to do more with that, and the feminine as inherently a synonym with resistance, with struggle with one path through things, and that's for me is how I see this, and what I identify with also the most. As Mathilde is saying, is that she's not outspoken about the fact that yeah, I am a woman, for example, and I don't know, it's not like I'm a woman filmmaker. It's not how she's even, I don't know how she presents in that way, but you cannot, it's really about, yeah, how, yeah, I lost a bit my train of thoughts, but I think that's a little bit what I'm, if I catch it, I'll get back to it, so.
That's interesting. I never realized that this idea of of transforming Beirut in womanizing, as you said, womanizing Beirut was something, because if we check the history, she always received the name of a woman. Even the Phoenicians gave her the name of a woman. I can't remember exactly the name right now, but she was always seen as a woman. And in this point of view that you're presenting, Nour, is something amazing, something that that's something bouleverse this changed completely my idea, where I was thinking about the representation of a city and why she was considered a woman since her foundation, let's see, a long time ago. She was called by, I don't know, from the Romans or something like that. They gave a name, I don't know if it was Julia or something like that, a name, a female name. So something that really shocks me and makes me think, and I can say thank you, because I never realized that it could be like that.
Yeah, I don't, at least I don't know the histories that you are referring to be honest, but yeah, for me there's this very specific I don't know, because there's this representation of the city as a woman, for example, by specifically, as I was saying, by a lot of male poets, as it becomes the object and the target of desires, right? Mm-hmm. Especially that Beirut has this image of being open, and but I think that if we were to see how Beirut is present in Jocelyne's films, is actually more in the feminine, that has to do with the multiple, right, and the contradictory and the incoherent in all of its most alive sense. In that sense, I would say, sorry, my cats are going the same. In that sense, I would say there is she بتحمل how do you say elle fait porter la ville, le féminin. I don't know how you would head it, but I won't say that she becomes a woman. Like it's not the same thing for me. Like it feminizes Beirut, but not represents it as a woman. Yeah. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah.
No, yeah, no, it's fantastic. In fact, it really makes me think about, as I told you, because we always know, as we think about the history, Beirut's history, she was always linked to a woman, Julia Augusta. I don't know in French or in English, but that is the name in Portuguese. If we translate to Portuguese, that was the name given by Romance and Greek people So she was always just like, and what I really associate, what I can associate Beirut as a woman is not because of an object of desire, but as a body with it is always constructed and reconstructed, territorialized and deterritorialized, and it is the woman's body which has to follow the rules of the patriarchy. So that's the point. That's something that makes me think Beirut as a woman and not the point of view as an object. But this is amazing, and this is the richness of a conversation. You show me a point of view which has never passed by my mind. I never thought about that, and this is amazing and something to discuss. Really, thank you so much for this point of view.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I can talk about the fact that it was not easy for Jocelyne either to show these movies, and actually it's interesting to hear that Nour didn't have the chance to see any of Jocelyne's film, but in the university or in the theaters when the film was released, because actually it was not easy to find Jocelyne's film. It is still not easy to find Jocelyne's films, to watch them. Like it's not distributed. It's quite difficult to find archive having Jocelyne's film, and this is also something which is quite interesting to ask because when I met Jocelyne in 2013, I came to Beirut to work on her filmography, and when I met her, she was, as she did with Nour, like after 10 minutes, she was like, I'm doing a festival, I need an assistant, would you like to be my assistant? And I started working with Jocelyne on the festival for like 4 or 5 months, and she didn't give me any film. And my supervisor in the university was like, did you start working on the masters? And I was like, I don't have the films, so I cannot start on working on the masters. And Jocelyne was working, like we were working together like every day for months. And at some point she was like, okay, let's start, like I will give you the films, like and the films were like, she kept it under her bed in the huge suitcase, and she started trying to find the film, and she was like, yeah, this is a very bad copy from the French archives, this is bad DVDs from, and actually the copies she was giving to me, it was in really bad state. Like it was like you had the logo of the French archive, for French TV archive, like it was not usable, actually, not screenable actually. And I started taking what she was giving to me. I started watching what she was giving to me, and since I knew Jocelyne, I understood quite well what I was seeing, much more than if I watched it before. So I was quite happy to have the chance to work and meet Jocelyne and know how she was working, how she's thinking, to understand the work she had done. But when I started working on these archives, I needed to go back to the French TV archive to find the films she didn't have. And this is when we started working on building an archive for Jocelyne, actually. And when you see the difficulties she had to show these images, and she was proud of having a career. This is not, that was not the problem. And she wanted to make DVDs, and she wanted, like, she always dreamed of editing the films and showing the films, talking to younger generations, and but it was really hard for her actually to show these images that is holding her past. And I always found it very touching, you know. She never really liked to watch her films, and sometimes she was curious to see what it became, and this simplicity and this also this pain that you could feel when she was talking about, like, no, I don't want to like watch it if you want, I don't want to watch it. Like the Palestinian woman that is screened in the festival, it was a film that was not that hasn't been broadcasted in 1974 when she made it, because she was censored by the French TV. But she never wanted to watch it again. Like, she never knew what was the film actually, and she was like, "No, I'm not sure it's good. I think it's bad. And anyway, forget it. Like, don't don't try to find it. It's anyway, it's in the TV archive, and we don't need it, you know. Because she was shy because it's a huge history she documented, and it was also her personal history, and I don't know. I think it's very nice that people like Nicole Brenez or other people like decided to Olivia Douchy and other critics, not only in France but also in Asia, because she was working a lot in Asia as well, like Philippe Chi and others, decided to show her film and to start showing her that it has an interest, because actually it was too painful for her to talk about these images and to screen these images before the end of her life. And actually she died quite young, and she was sick for more than 3 years, and this is a good end to see that actually the work she started doing lately is now like has the chance to be screened in Brazil, for example. You know, it's marvelous to see that. Okay, it's going far away. Like it's not only Europe. It's going like on the other side. It's going everywhere now. Like it's screened in Asia. It's screened in Latin America. It's something that I think she would be very proud of, actually. Like even if she never had the energy to do it herself, I think it's like it's a chance, and it's nice, because I think it can talk to anyone, like this kind of films and filmography. Like it's so yeah, she could access the rank of like an international filmmaker, and I think she deserves it a lot. So thank you again for this programmation.
I think
in fact, now you can give your main, your final considerations, what you think, your opinion in a certain way. Mathilde has already told us what she thinks about it, and Nour, it would be very good to hear from you too.
Yeah, I think that by the time I met Jocelyne, I met her in the last 2 years of her life, so she was already sick. And I found that she had more energy than me, so I don't know how it was before that. I always used to think of myself as an old woman when I sit with Jocelyne. But I think that by the time I met her, Mathilde, all the work that you and Nicole and Olivier and all the stuff, the unearthing of these films had taken its effect. And I think it was also because of and by the time I met her, because we were working also on this book that very clearly was a project that's trying to kind of review in ways all of these images, all of this life, right? And all the places that it went. And so the way that I discovered her films was actually in the opposite way. It was through her eyes, through her desire to watch them. And while watching the films, it was always because I had to try to extract images. And it was always very interesting to be in both these positions of someone seeing them for the first time and trying to think, okay, and coming from a completely different generation, but from the same city, and trying to see, okay, what makes sense to keep in these images, and all the discussions that we had to see, okay, what scenes, I remember from Beirut Never Again, there's a scene, very harsh scene with kids that are naked in a parking lot of a school. And I remember we had a big discussion about this scene, if we wanted to include snapshots, like stills from that scene in the book. And I was telling her that these images are very emotional, like very intense, quite violent even. And also today, these are images that maybe we have seen in other places. And then I remember her telling me, but when I filmed them, this was the first time we saw images like this. And so you had this dialogue between a time where the reportages and the stuff that she was making was the only way to show certain things, and the time where today images can go viral. So the approach that, the way that we worked on this book was always in this constant dialogue of okay, when these films were made, how were they made and what intention? So what do we keep from that? But also what makes sense to have today in the way that we look at the world and what we have seen, what we have accumulated. Because the thing with, I always feel with filmmaking is that every film that is made is actively changing something, accumulating. And I see that a lot, for example, in her films, is that when I saw her filmography, especially her films that when she did stuff where she films Beirut, it actively changed the way that I look at the city, because now in my retina almost, I have stocked these images and yeah. So yeah, by the time I met her and we were working on this project, she was also at the end of her life, and I had to go through all her archives, not only her films, but dozens of hard drives with copies of folders of all her trips. So diving also in this personal archive to try to unearth a lot of stuff and to relate them to the films that she made. So I think it was almost the inverse process of what Mathilde was doing. Mathilde was opening, and what I did with her was to try to reduce in certain ways, and I find that quite beautiful. Yeah.
All right then. I don't know if anyone else would like to add something. Otherwise, Analu, you can finish this fantastic conversation. I can give you the floor to make any other comments about this fantastic exchange we had here. Or anyone else. If anyone else would like to ask any questions to Mathilde and Nour, feel free. Otherwise, we can. Analu, would you like to add something?
I'll talk in English first, then in Portuguese. I appreciate so much for your availability to be here and bring out that experience you have with Jocelyne Saab. I am very touched with everything you all said. Thanks so much for coming and talking. It was amazing. And thank you, FEDRA, for being here. Thank you, Raquel, for doing the translation. Thank you, Laís and Rosane for the translation as well. And yeah, now I'm going to stay in Portuguese. Gente, então, muito obrigada por terem vindo, muito obrigada por terem participado, por estarem aqui e terem disponibilizado seu tempo para falar sobre essa experiência maravilhosa, sobre essa grande experiência que vocês tiveram com a Jocelyne Saab. Também agradeço a Raquel pela tradução, agradeço a Laís e a Rosane pela tradução de Libras, e acompanhem toda a programação no site www.cinemarofeminino.com. Obrigada, gente. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Yes, it was.
Thank you. Bye-bye.